Hello, everybody. Today I thought we'd revisit Curse of Osiris and Osiris' prophecies to see what exactly they were talking about and how much of the Light and Darkness saga they predicted. There's not really a lot to say for this intro, so let's get straight into it with Garden Progeny 1. Two siblings cleave by space and time, reflections never found alone. The ending of the Eldritch race, a path long seen but never known. The first half is about the relationship between the Traveler and the Veil. They used to be one, but were divided, and the reflections are the darkness and the light, as they basically are opposite of each other, with light being about life in the material realm, and darkness being associated with the death in the immaterial, consciousness, stuff like that. The second half, it's one of two things. I think that it's talking about either the witnesses' creation as their race, the precursors, basically all killed themselves when they merged their consciousness into the witness, or the witness's death, as it could be argued that their race didn't end when they became the witness, but rather we ended it when we killed them. The part about how it was a long seen but never known doesn't really line up with the first explanation, but the second one does make more sense. However, the race mentioned could also be talking about a race in the act of moving swiftly, so if we go with this, then it would be talking about the witness's pursuit of the traveler. The Conqueror 2. To Tower comes the war in red, an orphan sounds the Empire's call. Mortal angels mourn the dead, while lightless light wraps night in pall. This one's easy, it's talking about the Red War. It's kind of obvious, it should be obvious at least. Jack King Queen 3. An army meets, stands, and falls. Three nobles wage their hopeless war. In shifting madness, evil crawls. One stands above the battle's roar. This seems to be referring to the Dreaming City's curse. The Jack, Queen, and King referred to in the title, that would be Mara, Uldren, and Oryx, because, Oryx took Riven, and Riven caused a curse. Uldren is the Jack, Mara is the Queen, and, Oryx obviously is the King. The army is the Awoken army trying to fight the curse, always meeting, standing, and falling due to the time loop. The three nobles might be Kali, Sadia, and Shirochi, always fighting a hopeless fight to end the city's curse, but I'm not 100% sure about that. The crawling evil is likely Riven, as the madness could refer to her being taken, and the one standing above the battle is Savathun, who was the cause of the curse and manipulated all of the events into Forsaken, and and the events of causing the curse and whatever, us killing Riven, she manipulated that all to happen. Machina Day 4. A charnel but effluent orb, beacon in the loathsome dark. Fetid corpses rise, long too absent, gibbous spark. This one's about Shadowkeep. The orb is the one we take from the pyramid that leads us to the garden, it's a beacon in the dark. It also gives us the unveiling lore book. The corpses are the nightmares, and the gibbous spark, I believe, is the pyramid waking up. Traveler's Judgment 5. A visitor ignites the sky, and in truth of light it dreams. Above the dead and yet to die, a legion's blade with fire screams. The name does point towards the awakening of the Traveler at the end of the Red War and Gull's death, but it could also be about the season of the Worthy. The visitor is Amtech, and the truth of light is in reference to the Scion Flayers' attempt to undo the Guardian's victory in the Red War. The Legion's blade with fire is the Almighty heading towards Earth. The name could also be talking about why the Almighty was set to crash to Earth. The Traveler's Judgment, it destroyed Gaul, and the events of Season of Dawn is about the Scion Flayer sisters attempting to undo the Guardian's victory in the Red War, or, undo the Traveler's Judgment. They failed, and Amtech set the Almighty to crash into Earth in revenge. All of that was caused by the Traveler's Judgment. Soul Pariah 6. Amid the endless death one flew, unnatural all-consuming need. And in the space between the two, accursed comprehension freed. This one is difficult, but I think it's talking about Uldren and the Season of the Hunt. As, at this point, he was an outcast in the solar system, or a soul pariah. The endless death is referring to the Wrathborn, as they were massacring spider soldiers, and the one who flew is, obviously Crow, not just because of his name, but he was receiving visions from the Traveler where he was flying, and honestly, whatever happened to those visions anyways? Like what like was that plotline just scrapped? Like, or am I just stupid? And I just didn't realize something. Like, am I stupid and did I miss the resolution to that plot line or whatever? Because like, weren't they setting up like the crow to be like the next speaker or something? I don't know. Yeah, but where was I? Oh yeah. The all-consuming need, that looks like it's talking about the Wrathborn curse and its ability to change regular creatures into Wrathborn with an overwhelming need and desire for violence. The second half, I believe, is talking about us freeing the crow from his slavery to the spider. What it means by the space between the two, I'm not really sure. Could be talking about the space between us and the spider, like literally, or the space between light and dark as he's awoken, or the space between him and his sister, since, it's... I'm not really sure, honestly. West of Sunfall 7. A spark of knowledge with each fall, the purpose of the endless youth. No longer shunned, the dark nameless call now brings about Tenebra's truth. This is about beyond light. The spark of knowledge with each fall matches us learning more about stasis with each splinter we collected, and the definition of Tenebris is literally darkness. Infinite Paths 8. They sow the first, now reap the last, forever narrows into a line, where light will fade into the past, when all's converted, nothing shines. This one's definitely talking about the Vex, specifically, I think, the aftermath of the Undying Mind's death. Because after the Undying Mind was destroyed, the simulations in the Infinite Forest were all replaced by one where they were in a lightless void. The last city was replaced with a dust storm, and the Traveler was replaced by an obsidian monolith. That all sounds like Final Shape or whatever, but that all lines up with the prophecy, and it's the best explanation I have for this one. It's not a perfect match though, so there's still a possibility that this could be relevant later for like a Vex-centric DLC or something. Null Calamity 9. A sacred eye that speaks and lies, upending futures in its path. The way before us to the skies shall see itself in ancient wrath. So the first line, that could be talking about Savathun. She's watched us through eyes before, like in Arrivals, and she's the hive god of deception, but the part about upending futures doesn't make sense, which is why I think that this first part is actually talking about Six. You see, the 9 take the form of giant eyes with tentacles, and Six has been deceiving Baal, and Six's actions have definitely upended futures, so that's what I think is talking about Six, okay? And it also might be indicating that Six has been influencing things in the background, like creating Dredge and Yor. If you want more info on that and why I think that, I made an entire video about Six's connections to the Hive. The link will be in the description if you do want to watch it. The second line, I think that's referring to Lightfall. The sky has always been used in reference to the Traveler and the Light, and in the events of Lightfall, we fight against the Witness's forces to prevent them from acquiring the Veil, which gave the Witness a way to access the Traveler's pale heart. We fought against the ancient wrath of the Witness to prevent them from acquiring a way to the skies. Future Safe 10. See who's robed as if a god who stands with pride above the rest. Destroy this ancient nameless fraud. Destroy the one whose death was blessed. This is talking about the final shape and the death of the Witness. The death that was blessed is probably referring to the Precursor's race's extinction when they combined their consciousnesses to create the Witness. And that's all of them. It looks like, to me at least, that these did leave a sort of vague outline for the rest of the Light and Darkness saga. And also, the absence of the Witch Queen from this, I do think that either that was what Null Calamity 9 originally was talking about, and Lightfall was supposed to be Future Safe 10, which, does make sense, because, they made Final Shape, because, it was originally supposed to, Beyond Light, Witch Queen, then Lightfall, now supposed to be the end of that was supposed to be the end of the Light and Darkness saga, but then they turned Lightfall into what it is now, and then they made the Final Shape. Where was I? Yeah, like I said, they just end up changing it when they decided to make the Final Shape, which was probably sometime during the Witch Queen's development, or with how out of place Infinite Paths 8 is, and as everything else was going in chronological order, and Splicer doesn't really line up with it. So, there might have been originally a Vex-centered expansion planned when they wrote these, and, they ended up scrapping it later on, probably when they realized that the Vex are kind of impossible to write a compelling expansion about and decided to make the Witch Queen instead, or, yeah. Where was I? Oh yeah. Meaning, me, meaning they never planned to have a Savathun-centric expansion in the first place. That, paired with how weird No Calamity 9 is, I think that that everything past Beyond Light had gotten scrapped at one point and was rewritten into what we have now. I also want to acknowledge that Traveler's Judgment 5 in its lore tab, Brother Vance does say that the first 5 prophecies talk about the Traveler's Awakening and the events of the Red War, except that doesn't really work. All the stuff I listed fits into the prophecy far too well for it to not be about them. But that also gives us another issue. If those aren't about the Red War, then how could the Vex predict things like the Lunar Pyramid Awakening or the Curse of the Dreaming City, since, they can't simulate paracausality? This is an issue if those first 5 were talking about the Red War also, since, they couldn't predict the Traveler's Awakening, and there's still those other 5 prophecies. This is addressed in the lore tab, by the way, as Vance says either verse 5 doesn't talk about the Traveler's Awakening, or Osiris has some other way of making his prophecies besides the Infinite Forest. So how did he prophesize all of that? I think it's the 9. Because, Osiris has interacted with the 9 before, as the 9 can't predict paracausality, and that's kind of the only explanation. If you're wondering where he interacted with them, by the way, it was on Europa. It's said in like an idle dialogue in the in like a Vestian outpost in Destiny 1 for Brother Vance, if you're wondering. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. One thing I'm probably going to look at in the future are the 2 truth and 2 lies things from the Witch Queen, as since I don't think they've all been answered just yet. So it'd be interesting to see how those might impact the future. Anyways, if you've made it this far in the video, I would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and leave a like, a comment, and share the video, as that helps me in the algorithm. And with that, I'll see you later.